you doing? How's life? You seem to be holding up pretty well, huh? Oh, look at that. Yeah, you ain't so bad yourself. Yeah, you're old and gray, but you were always gray, so you just got old. Kind of like me. How's the old age thing treating you? Yeah, getting old sucks. A lot can happen in 20 years. I'd know a lot about it, and you'd obviously know a lot about it. I mean, look, you obviously had some work done to touch up a few things here and there, deal with a few scratches and wrinkles and, stuff that comes with having a few too many birthdays, but it's been a long 20 years, and you still have signs of 20 years ago, like the completely destroyed USB ports, or the 2000Z looking peripherals. Oh, look, a floppy drive. And not just any floppy drive, a Sony floppy drive. And stuff like that. We could plug you in and fire you up, but you can still run Windows XP, but we're not here to do that today. Folks, not much changes in 20 years. And goofball skits aside, my original Athlon processor makes for an interesting conversation piece these days. Yeah. It's hard to believe that I've been doing this stuff for 20 years, and it began with a computer that was supposed to get me through college, not getting me through college. Hence the silver bullet, and the reason why I've kept this case for sentimental reasons, no matter how beat up it gets. But like I just alluded to earlier, some things just don't change even in 20 years. That's right, folks. We're here to do some computer building. This is just a little walk down memory lane. But now, it's time to pull our heads out of 2002 and into 2023, because we've got some serious upgrading to do.
The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Do, 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 do. A familiar start to a familiar kind of video, but this time with a twist. You may think you know what's going on right now, but this is the internet. You never know the whole story. You only know what I'm showing you in front of the camera. Valuable life skill, folks. Valuable life skill. This is a box for a case, which you could probably think would be my next computer case. A Thermaltake Versa H17. It is my next computer case, but it is not for the new system. So I have a perfectly A-OK fractal design Define R5 for a case, and I don't see any real reason to stop using it. I have gone through multiple systems and cases before with Tuxedo's case, so this go around I decided just to get a spin-off case for 2010's Monolith to put the Skylake stuff into. So I went looking around. I wanted to keep the aesthetic and everything. I don't really like the direction that computer cases have gone in over the past several years. I don't need some meshy, I can hear all the components thing with 3 rainbow fans spinning in the front, or any fancy lights whatsoever. I don't mind a plain old black box, and Thermaltake has a plain old black box in micro ATX, so the motherboard should fit in here. Let me see if I can figure out why the heck cases do what they do these days. So most cases are like this these days. Some zoomer is going to have to explain to me why the heck they do this, but I think I can figure most of it out. I mean, optical drives, for example, are mostly for legacy media. You can probably get away with a plug-in drive these days. So we have mounting points for some SSDs, old-fashioned SSDs, because now your M2s can just go right on the motherboard. That's one of the coolest things that's changed over the past several years, is your OS and storage can now go wherever the board goes without having to lug anything else around. Let's see, we got a 120mm Thermaltake fan in here. We'll have to see how loud that is. I've got plenty of fractal 120s. You could probably mount some more fans where obviously a radiator could go for AIO cooling and stuff like that. But I'm guessing if you had old-fashioned drives, you'd shove them behind the power supply down here and put another fan in there to cool it all. It's a simple, understandable design. It's a simple, understandable design for simplistic computers. Obviously, though, favoring systems with windows on the side, so you can look in and see all your pretty tubing for your AIO cooler and stuff like that. I just hope that the Hyper 212 Evo fits in this thing. This thing's about the size of the Delosaurus. It might be a really tight squeeze, or I might end up denting the side panel trying to get it to close. I have a hard time believing the motherboard's this small, but it is micro ATX. I went with that last time, and I thought it looked a little small in the old case. It might fit right at home in this cozy little thing. Oh, some rudimentary cable management in the back, just without the fancy rubber grommets. So you just gotta be careful not to have the sides of the wires pushing against the surface of the metal surfaces too much. And yeah, not bad. It basically looks like a 50-50 split between Monolith and one of the Delosauruses. Well, that should work out all right in the long run, or something like that. A couple of rubber grommets and screws in an accessories bag, but what I like the most, it has a PC speaker in it, so I don't have to buy another one, because I don't mind my computers still actually beeping when I start them up. Although I imagine some people probably use these as diagnostic tools nowadays. If they think there's something wrong with their computer, plug in the speaker and listen for a postcode. Stuff like that. Anyways, this is only the secondary attraction here. It's just where all the current stuff is going to go if it fits, I hope. Let's look at the main attraction now. And here's the main attraction. A plain brown box. Thumbs up, Newegg! I actually like that Newegg got away from all the branded packaging. I really wonder about these e-tailers dropping stuff on people's porches with big, loud advertising about what's in it. In this day and age of porch pirates, you'd think that the world of e-tail and fulfillment could do better than this, but yeah. And why pay extra for custom branded packaging that's just going to potentially cause customer service issues? We all know that a plain brown box means something's in it, we don't know what it is, and it's kind of like a Christmas present in that sense, except with very, very boring wrapping paper. Yeah, well, I'm kind of chuckling because my folks have this thing where my stepmother constantly orders from Amazon, and so he's like, "What's this? What's this? I don't know, open it! I forgot what I ordered!" One of those deals. Either way, this is my first order from Newegg since all the scandals that ticked everybody off. I haven't bought anything from Newegg since 2021. Hopefully they've gotten their act together. As a 20-year customer of Newegg, having first ordered from them in 2002, you'd think that the strength of their brand would be something they'd want to hold on to. But we shall see. Looks like the box kind of got tenderized a little by the United Package Smashers, and the shipment was delayed. So some labor negotiation out in the Midwest and nationally with UPS, I don't know. Either way, UPS, baby. Like I said, some things never change. The computers that I worked with in the early 2000s survived the United Package Smashers, and I hope this one does too. Let's pop it open. Alright, I'm opening this upside down because the shipping label's on the other side and I'm too lazy to go over it with the marker and stuff. So we're starting from the bottom, now we hear. Isn't that a dated reference nowadays?
Epic fail.
So starting with the motherboard and absolutely zero packaging on the bottom, so hopefully it didn't get slapped too much as it made its way over here. We're going back to full size, yeah, it's a Ryzen system. We're going back to full size ATX with lots of plugs for lots of SSDs, for lots of storage, so we can have all kinds of games and all kinds of other stuff on here. I want to go back to the comprehensive, almost but not quite a server systems that I've had in years gone by. So MSI Pro X670P Wi-Fi, Ryzen X670, no B chipsets here. I want this motherboard to survive several processors if the Ryzen I put in it doesn't blow up like those X3Ds did. Going to MSI this time because Asus seems to be having some problems these days, and I'm pretty much done with Gigabyte. Oh, look! Some packaging on the top of the box. I understand, not wanting things to get crushed in transit, but these are electronics. They're subject to mechanical shock. So when the warehouse folks in the service hubs for UPS and whatnot are slapping this down on the belt, or if it falls off a pallet on some shipping dock somewhere, I don't know. Never did understand a lot of stuff with fulfillment. I prefer putting packing on the bottom and the top. But anyways, upside down though it is, this is a big box for what it is. It's a Ryzen 9 7900, the Hippie chip. I decided to go with the Hippie chip because of all the issues with the X3Ds. And the X3Ds, I think, have some design problems that are going to affect their longevity. We'll talk about this in one of the various commentary videos I want to make when I get going on that on this channel. But basically, if you buy an X3D processor, even the 7800 X3D, which is a cool processor, but it reminds me of buying a console. It seems to have like a limited lifespan because of the nerfed ability to overclock and do other stuff to kind of drag out the lifespan of the processor. Yep, Ryzen 9 retail package 7900, the Hippie chip. Not the fastest, not the most expensive, but it has that stock cooler that AMD's always bragging about. So we're going to try that, and if the stock cooler ticks me off, we'll just order a deep cool or something and install that. AMD's been like, look at our Wraith coolers, they're so awesome! Okay, we'll check that out. This is a Hippie chip, so even if the cooling sucks, it only has a 65 watt TDP, so hopefully it's not too drony. 12 cores, 24 threads, coming from a 4.8 with the Skylake i7, which had a 91 watt TDP, by the way, so Hippie chip it is. Now, I realize I could have gotten a Core i5 13600, which is probably the best all-around processor out there, but I want to see how much performance I can squeeze out of this Hippie chip. Let's not do the obvious here. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a challenge. Our SSD of choice, aka SSD, the AMD Ryzen, that Hippie chip is really messing with me. Samsung 980 Pro PCIe 4 to match the snazzy new PCIe 4 slot on that motherboard. This is our first chance to fool around with all this new stuff, so we might as well have some fun. I eventually intend on taking the old M2 out of the other system and just running 2010's Monolith off of an old-fashioned SSD. So I want to do that so that way I can have a terabyte of M2 speed with a heatsink gaming storage. Today's consoles have high-speed SSDs in them for their storage, so if I want to trounce the consoles as a PC gamer, I think it's time for me to move to having my biggest, beefiest games stored on an M2 SSD instead of an old-fashioned serial ATA one. Alright, anything left amidst all of this sealed air? I think there's one more thing in here, but yeah, so I do appreciate that Newegg in the last 20 years said goodbye to styrofoam peanuts. I remember when computer upgrades came in so many styrofoam peanuts that I had a huge box of them just sitting around in case I wanted to ship something so I wouldn't throw them out. And then after about 4 or 5 years, I just threw them out. Or maybe it's like 2 to 3 or something. What's still in this thing? Ah yes, RAM. Corsair Vengeance DDR 5600 on sale. Probably because I think 6,000 is the ideal speed for the Infinity Fabric or something. I don't know, we'll give this a shot. It's 2 sticks, so we'll start at 32 this time, and then fill in the other slot to go up to 64 gigs of RAM. The 16 gig era is over, folks. Newer games nowadays will take up to 16 gigs by themselves. Just use MSI Afterburner to watch your resource usage on a bigger system. So, Hogwarts Legacy calls for 32 gigs if you want to max it out. I imagine 64 will be around soon. It won't just be the domain of content creators and so that's the real reason why he bought the extra RAM. Oh, shut up, you.
Epic fail.
Out of the box with the Hippie chip here. Chiplet design, that's cool. I suppose I can get used to it as opposed to the monolithic stuff that I've worked with before, but I better get used to it because when Intel finally gets some more updated manufacturing capacity, they will probably be making chiplet processors as well, from what I'm hearing. And this... well, that's a chunky-ass stock cooler. It even has LED lighting, so the zoomers will actually light it. Like it. Wow. Can't think straight, man. Just gotta figure out what to do with this stuff.
Epic fail.
Let's see. That is not a 120mm fan, so hopefully it's not too loud and drony. Otherwise, I already know what deep cool I want to get to replace this with whenever I've had enough of it. What the hell kind of thermal compound spread method crap is that?
Epic fail.
I might as well spread mayonnaise on this chip with a freaking butter knife. Well, you know what? We're gonna get the stock experience to start. I have plenty of Arctic silver if I don't like the temperatures in this thing. Wow. The spread method, we'll call that the industrial method. Whatever.
Epic fail.
Advance with AMD Ryzen. This box includes an AMD Ryzen processor and a high-performance AMD Wraith thermal solution. Yeah, whatever, advanced marketing devices. We'll see.
Epic fail.
So some folks might be wondering why I'm so rough on AMD, despite, liking their products from time to time and stuff. Well, I've decided I'm not going to give them a free pass, despite, we go way back. But the thing is, AMD's a company, just like Intel is a company. They can and will screw their customers if their customers don't hold them accountable. Here's a wonderful example in the warranty documentation for this lovely new Ryzen processor and other Ryzen processors that they're selling right now. Check this out under the warranty terms here. To ensure full compliance with the AMD limited warranty for PIV processor in a box products, a thermal solution must be used. For those processor in a box products that include a thermal solution, the thermal solution included must be used. So there in the fine print, AMD gives themselves the ability to deny your warranty if your processor fries when you weren't using the stock cooler. See what I mean? We can't give these companies a free pass. They have to compete. They have to earn our purchase. You can never be a fanboy about anything, because companies, when they find out they have fanboys, like AMD does, they'll in some way run wild with it. Anywho, let's check out the motherboard. Holy crap, this is the heaviest motherboard that I've ever had. Probably because of all the heavy metal. Something like that. Yeah, lots of nice heat sinks and stuff. I didn't want to get one of those motherboards that has the stupid little squirrel cage fan for the chipset, so there's a trade-off when you want to go back to passive cooling for stuff like that these days. MSI, does it have an I/O shield somewhere? I think it does. Yeah, lots of nice heat sinks, 4 RAM slots, and stuff like that. The usual things you plug everything into on the board. And of course, it wouldn't be a motherboard without a KTS battery. Some M2s and a beefy heatsink for the main system drive, where that's going to go, the new Samsung and everything like that. And also over on the serial ATA front, we're back to 6 full ports. 1 will be for the Blu-ray drive, and then I can put 5 SSDs in this thing. I'll have 2 hard drives, of course, for the old data array, but everything else is SSD. At some point, I'll probably get rid of the rest of the mechanical drives and go full solid state and see what that does to the power consumption. So more M2s, though. There's room for more M2s, including the old system drive. So we'll probably set up some risers and screws and heat sinks for more drives and stuff. So that way you can get more M2 SSDs and have even faster storage. I think this will be it. I mean, I like to have the one ring style, Lord of the Ringsy style, one computer to rule them all type thing. This is pretty much it. Nice that consumer stuff can do this too. Solid metal can capacitors around this. My first board died of capacitor plague, so I remember that. So, I remember those days. I don't miss them either. So, got this thing over here, and of course the latch for the Ryzen. It works like Intel CPUs now with the pins on the board, so I'm leaving the cover on until I absolutely am ready to drop that sucker in. So, yeah. I also like the Darth Vader theme of this board. Kind of like that board that I picked up for Tuxedo when I got the AMD FX for it. Nice. Okay, gawking at new toys time is over. It's time to get down to the nitty-gritty and do some work. So yeah, I did forget that this motherboard, right, yeah, I forgot this motherboard was as small as it is. I knew it felt like it was too small for this case, but yeah, this case does support full-size ATX, and it'll be good to get back to it, even if I mostly use the M2 slots and the serial ATAs. The big thing too, you don't have any more of those serial ATA cables perpendicular to the motherboard, so if there's one under the graphics card, we won't have to buy a special cable for it. That's the unfortunate reality, is I'm going to have to take that low-profile serial ATA cable out with the board so it can go to the 2010's Monolith case. Hey, by the way, cleaning putty. Don't take care of computers without it. It's great to just smudge it in and pull all the dust out. Oh, the Newegg reviews weren't kidding. It's tight, but it goes on flat without bowing. Wow, that is close. So because of the Ripjaw's RAM, I can't push the 120mm fan all the way down. It brings up just a hair off the top of the Hyper 212 Evo. So I was hoping I could actually get the cover on with this thing. So the plastic from the fan is basically going to be touching the metal on this panel here. So, woohoo! But it fits though, and it looks like it fits a little, it looks like it belongs here a lot more than an actual micro ATX case. So let's get everything bolted in. The first thing we need to do is we need to get 2010's Monolith working inside this case, because we're going to have to go fetch data off of it and all kinds of other stuff. Thing is, as you all probably know if you've been watching these videos, this means the rather abrupt sudden end of Tuxedo RTX. We're going to be grabbing the power supply and the graphics card for the 2010's Monolith. We know that combo works, unlike 3060 Ti with my old power supply. So, we just did some hardware flipping a couple of weeks ago, and now we're going to flip it again. But first, we need to bolt in this motherboard. Alright, well that's progress. The motherboard's bolted in and literally nothing else. I already had to put a Sharpie to this cheaper case. Yeah, it scratches very, very easily. According to the printed guide on the board, the number 1 screws are supposed to be for mini ITX, the number 2 screws are supposed to be for micro ATX, and the 1 and 2 screws are for both. So I thought I had to put risers in these two, but the board actually fit in without even needing them. And I know it's a micro ATX board, so I don't know, maybe this is a way that they deny people warranties. I don't know. Either way, let's dig out the graphics card and the power supply from Tuxedo. We're going to be doing a lot of computer swapping just to get one new system working. That's why I took the 2 days off, folks.
Epic fail.
Tuxedo, the last system I had with a case that lasted through multiple systems. Core 2 Duo, 1090T, and now FX 8320E, the Hippie chip of the FX series. Nice little experiment to see how long early 2010s technology can stay relevant. And we gotta get the graphics card out of this thing as well as the power supply. I just put that stuff in 3 weeks ago or whatever it was. It wasn't that long ago. Oh yeah, whenever I upgrade, I'll pull everything out. I didn't think it would be this quick. Either way, we also have a leftover power supply from that giant gear swap that needs to go somewhere, so we'll put it in here while we're at it. There we go. Got that old thing back after it was in here for a couple of weeks. The 600 bronze that was in here earlier is now back in this thing instead of sitting on the floor. You know what? I'm just going to leave this as is. We'll come back and bring this back later. I didn't get all this stuff to spend any significant amount of time fiddling with Tuxedo. Let's get 2010's Monolith up and running. So that's how these Zoomer cases work. Everything goes in the other side. Power supply goes in there. You could probably squeeze a hard drive or an additional SSD in there if you really wanted to. And then of course you have fans in the front. Whoosh! Giant wind tunnel in all directions. Well, front to back anyways. I don't know where this thing sucks the air in from though. I didn't get the mesh front version of this case. I like my cases to actually be cases, which is why I hate this magnetic dust filter on top and having that. Ugh, seriously. I just have this constant dreadful thought that one of these days the roof's gonna leak and then it's gonna just take out a system that way. I might just, after I'm done with all this, electrical tape over the top of this dust filter to make it solid. I've got the stuff for it, and I already did that to the Delosaurus forgot why, but yeah, alright, let's put the power supply in. Wow. Just plug in the graphics card and a few cables from the power supply and that's it. This new design and everything and all this M2 stuff where you can bolt the storage to the board and take it with you. Holy crap, you Zoomers are spoiled. This is why if you want to get a job in IT, you can't just learn how to build computers anymore. I mean, that was already a thing in my day, when jumpers were no longer a thing and you just plugged everything up and turned it on with a hard drive and power supply and extra fans and stuff like that. I have 120mm exhaust that came with the case. Just going to leave it bolted in. I'm going to fire this up and see how it runs as it is after plugging everything back in. But yeah, just plug it in, put it together. Just leave all the cables under here in this little cute little box, so we can keep all the cables there. This, maybe we could put in like some Velcro ties or something, but it all goes out through those holes just like before. We'll just pull the slack so more of it can go in the little storage compartment underneath. But yeah, this is easier. This is actually easier than most of the systems I've built, which just goes to show how effortless it is to learn how to build computers. You just got to make sure the parts aren't incompatible and you're already about halfway there. And maybe get some measuring tape so you don't have close calls like this fan hitting up. Oh, it's flush. It is flush. This fan is flush to the top of the case. A very tight squeeze because of that Ripjaw's memory kind of doming up a little from where the circuit boards actually are. But so effortless. We'll have this up and running soon, and it'll probably still work. It'll just be missing all its drives because they're all unplugged as far as the system is concerned. But that'll give us enough to get in, do basic computer stuff, and then while we work on the main system, can't play any games or anything, but we could browse the internet, we can do all kinds of stuff, and check email, and stay in touch with people as we continue this project. But these Zoomer cases really do represent, as well as M2 and all this stuff where the motherboard is way more important than it used to be, this all represents exactly what a generation of PC building has done. Crude cable management. This thing only came with a twisty tie. We'll put the spare parts under there with the power supply. It's like, this doesn't have any ventilation going in the side. Just stuff all the extra cables. And find the other cables for that and just toss them under here as well. Put them in the bag, save them with the case like I always do nowadays. And, yep, we can put it back together now. You Zoomer cases. I would never use something like this for a primary system. I want to be able to collect SSDs and hook up as many as I can for storage space. I've kind of amassed a collection since buying my first one in 2011, so run them into the ground, whatever. That's what you back up your data for. Alrighty then, so let's put this back together. It probably works, unless I reverse the polarity on one of those twiddle finger thingies that you plug in, like the power LED or something. Let's see how much of this works by using it Delosaurus style. The Geek House is back to dark mode for the launch of 2010's Monolith in its spin-off case. This is my first non-destructive PC build upgrade ever, where I don't lose the old system by building a new system. And that's by design, and for good reason, and 20 years of experiences informing that. 0.3 to 0.5 watts standby power, only one M2 drive in this thing and one fan. Let's see, this is technically solid state 2020. This is what I wanted a couple of years ago, to remove mechanical drives from Monolith. Just wasn't expecting it to go like this. Alright, how much does this thing work? Did we plug everything in the right spot? Let's find out. Maiden voyage in 3, 2, 1. It's blue! So it retains the blue Darth Vader theme. Do we have a signal? We downgraded our graphics card, so we'll probably have to nuke the drivers and reinstall them. But we have Windows 10! And we have a continuation of the blue Darth Vader theme, which even... That was quick. Yep, no graphics drivers. We have a continuation of the blue Darth Vader theme, which even Fractal Design didn't do. Shame on you, Fractal Design! Of course, in this day and age of everything being RGB, why wouldn't they just make an RGB power switch or something? Let's not give them any ideas.
Epic fail.
Well, that was fun. Well, as fun as it can get when pretty much all my games are broken because the only drive left is the C drive. I can do the basics on here though. Email, internet, keep in touch with folks, and it's about 30 to 60 watts power consumption, basically. It's like a Delosaurus, really. I can't emphasize enough, this micro ATX case makes this feel like we're using a Delosaurus here, with how small, light, and compact it is. But it's a Skylake i7, so it's way newer. Oh, it's been fun breaking in this old insane membrane keyboard and mouse that I've had over here, and yeah, it really does feel like a Delosaurus because of the case. Oh, but it pretty much is my system from about 6 months ago. Skylake i7 RTX 2060 6 gig. It's, well, it's definitely still got some life left in it, and maybe after Windows 10 goes EOS, I might try something else with it. But either way, it'll be fun to have this as a project system or a backup system or something along those lines. Alright, stalling and procrastinating is over, and, well, halftime is over. It's time to get all this crap off the desk and move on to the main event. I hope this all works, otherwise it's going to be so annoying swapping parts back. I kind of missed the old power supply clicking like that. Alright, it's time to start the main event here. So, I've been doing this for 20 years. Yeah, I'm old. Whatever. Anyways, the biggest thing that has changed in the last 20 years is everything is so motherboard-centric nowadays. You don't just slap in a processor and some RAM. Now you have... How many M2 slots does this thing have on it? You can put all your drives theoretically on one board and have your board go everywhere and not have to unplug other stuff. So it's almost to the point where the serial ATA is becoming redundant. But there are, if you have old SSDs sitting around, adapter cases that'll turn an M2 into a serial ATA into a plug-in drive, and an M2 into a plug-in drive as well. So storage is one heck of a commodity here. So socket AM5 for RAM slots, 6 serial ATAs for all those old SSDs that I'll slap files and games onto, and multiple M2s for faster SSDs as I get them. But I went many years before I actually used an M2 for the first time. Alright, so since it's been 20 years and so much stuff has changed, I'm going to do something that some of my nerd friends probably wished I would have done 20 years ago. We're going to put everything together on the motherboard and then put the motherboard in the case. I'm sure some people have wondered why I didn't already do that. Well, I've had my reasons. We're going to put the CPU, the chunky-ass heatsink on it, and slap the RAM in completely here. I mean, we just moved the motherboard by the heavy metal heatsink, heavy metal, out of Monolith into 2010's Monolith. I'm sure we can do that with this board, and we've got more heavy metal stuff to grab with these heavy-ass heatsinks. I think we'll be fine. Corsair Vengeance! Didn't James Rolfe say with that Far Cry Vengeance joke in his old Christmas special that if you add vengeance to something, it's gonna suck? I don't know. Anyways, just lift this thing up a little and, yeah, lift the light up a little. Alright, 4 RAM slots. What I like, though, is there's something that says which ones to plug in first when you're only using... So, use slots 2 and 4 first instead of 1 and 3. Well, that's interesting. Maybe that's why I kept getting memory errors on my old setup. This is on sale on Newegg. I mean, if this works out really well and I really want to spring for 64 gigs of RAM, I can just buy another one of these and just plop it in slots 1 and 3. Alright, let's start plugging everything in here. Oh, good. It looked kind of symmetrical there for a second. I was like, please tell me DDR5 hasn't gotten symmetrical. Which way does it go in? The Vengeance thingy facing the left? Let's see. The Vengeance thingy facing the left. Does it go in this way? No, it goes in the other way. Line it up. Probably should just get a tripod for this. Alright. It still only goes in the right way. Well, that's good. So, Sud time. This tiny little thing holds a terabyte. You Zoomers are effing spoiled. Whatever. Remove. Ah, cool. It has thermal contact material on both sides. This is supposed to be for Gen 5 storage, but I don't know when the heck Gen 5 is going to be a thing with this stuff. I'll stick with Gen 4 for now. Alright, got a nice heatsink for the main system drive. Should work pretty well. Alright, let's see if this is like Intel processors. Switched over to the same kind of connector as them. Opening this should take this cap, Opening this should take the cap off. How do you get the cap off? There's the pins. Oh, it just comes off like that. Okay. Thought that was automatic. Alright, main event time. Socket AM5. Oh yeah! There's triangles in the corners, just like all the other times I've done this. Boink! Nope, it's not in the tool. There we go. Doo-doo! And unlike the rectangular processors, this latch mechanism doo-doo, shouldn't warp the heck out of the chip. Alright, where's the chunky-ass heatsink? Yep, it works the same way as its ancestors. You got two little retention clip thingies on either side of this that you basically push down, and then you have a little lever right here that applies the rest of the pressure. Boom! Now that's a chunky-ass heatsink. So, I am totally following the terms of the warranty. We used the stock cooler, and we used the stock thermal compound. So, this thing better not burn itself up, AMD. I'm following your directions verbatim.
Oh no you're not, Jay. You forgot to plug in the CPU fan. Your chip is gonna burn itself up.
Hey, don't jinx anything here. 4-pin PWM header, and there. Now shut up already. Whatever.
Epic fail.
There, see? Other than a little wear and tear on some thumb screws and stuff like that, little cleaning putty, and nobody has to know that this is technically the old case. Plus, I don't have to unbolt and bolt the drives to the new case and stuff. So, anyways, yeah. Been a couple of years, and I thought I lost the risers I needed to finish this. But the risers in this case are coded for what type of board they support, and I just had to move all the M screws for micro ATX down to the A screws for regular ATX. So we got two M holes right there. Now we have A's with risers to properly fit the board and not short against a trace or something like that. Alright, let's Ryzen this sucker up. Yeah. Don't worry, I have a day job to keep now, so the whole don't quit your day job thing, it's a waste of time for me these days. Whatever.
Epic fail.
Getting there. It's almost ready to turn on. Just had to find a few more screws to finish attaching the motherboard. For some reason I didn't have enough, or maybe I have screws going through in the wrong spots. Who knows? Who cares? Either way, long as nothing shorts, right? Unfortunately, I'm going to have to redo all the drives. Why? Because I was using micro ATX last time. I have 90-degree connectors for everything. Doesn't work really well with a cluster of 6 plugs. We have enough plugged in to fire it up and see what happens. So let's do exactly that. 3, 2, 1. Ooh, pretty colors. Well, that part works. Now what? Well, that's kind of nice looking, even if nothing else is going right now. All this time for a light show. Ugh.
Epic fail.
Oh, wait. After about 30 seconds, it was like, you have a new CPU! Now it's just restarting all by itself. There's no light, so we gotta get the keyboard going and hit the BIOS key. Whatever that is with all this fancy new crap.
Hey! You have a new processor! You have new everything! Yuck.
Of course I do, you piece of crap. I just put you together for the first time. Alright, we have a BIOS. We have a BIOS! Don't I usually say that with more zeal or whatever? MSI Click BIOS 5, 3.7 gigahertz. The RAM's only running at 4800 for whatever reason. 670 Wi-Fi. It's detecting properly as a Ryzen 9 7900, 32 gigs of RAM. V-Core is 1.2 to 1.3, but this is 3.7 gigahertz. Core temperature is at 43 Celsius. What's it? How? It feels a little warm in here. It's almost 70. Yeah. Core is in the 40s. course, in the 40s right now with the stock cooler, the very pretty RGB stock cooler. You frickin' zoomers in your computers that double as light shows. I don't need this crap. I just need it to work. Every computer has to have a window and 3 rainbow fans in the front. Well, you finally got me to have a freaking rainbow fan because of AMD's freaking stock cooler. But I tell you right now, I do not plan on running this with the side of the case off just to look at the pretty lights.
Get something with a window.
No way! I just need it to work. I don't need it to be a light show.
Showing your age, man.
Well, hey, you know, happens when you have a few too many birthdays. BIOS is from 11/2022. We'll try and update the BIOS. First, we need to put Windows in this thing. But we get it to post. We don't get a beep, though. So I guessed wrong with the speaker. Alright, rainbow light is on. Still can't get the thing to beep. Keyboard light is on. And what the? No. I didn't get this processor to slow roast it at 5.45 gigahertz. Turns out there's an overclocking utility that you can click to turn on. But I'm going to turn that off. I want to be doing all that in the OS, and I want, Precision Boost Overdrive. I want the OS to control that, not the motherboard. Thank you very much. We're not trying to do manual overclocking with this thing. We didn't buy the freaking Hippie chip in order to run it full blast at 5.5 gigahertz.
Epic fail.
Good. It's cooling off now that we're running the processor at Hippie chip speed. 5.5 gigahertz with a stock cooler? I don't know. Sorry, MSI. I don't need you slow roasting my brand new processor. Alright, we're going to leave this thing installing Windows 10 while we go grab some pizza. Definitely a night to celebrate. We're going to start this thing on Windows 10, and then it'll just be eligible to upgrade to 11 whenever I feel like doing that. So, contact. There we go. See if it'll boot off the CD drive. It should be in Hippie mode. There is a BIOS update available for this motherboard. That's the Don't Cook My 7800X 3D patch. So the speaker's supposed to work, but it's not beeping when I start it up. Maybe it's time I pulled my head out of the 90s. Alright, let's see. Blinky, blinky, blink. MSI. More blinky, blinky. Press any key to boot from DVD. Yes, 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 yes. Woohoo! Alright, now we're going to get bottlenecked by using an optical drive. I'm just going to leave the fans running full blast because the thing has both its side panels off. We'll consider it the break-in period and see if the Ryzen Hippie chip cooks itself or whatever. Alright, let's let this thing do its thing while we're, well, having some supper. Remember in Mario Paint when it took forever to save and load? That's what this always reminds me of. This is the BIOS update that will install the latest BIOS, which puts those voltage limits on the processors to keep them from cooking themselves. So, yeah, we'll see how that works. Since you can update the BIOS without even having an OS on this thing, I think you could do it with the last computer too. I figured better be safe than sizzled. So, we are using a stock cooler after all. Good morning! It is day 2 of this Monolith fiasco, and what a rough day 1 it was. It was a nightmare getting Windows set up on this thing, and it took a lot of troubleshooting to figure out that one of the RAM sticks was a dud. You know, I was joking about an old AVGN reference when I said adding vengeance to something makes it suck. That was a reference to AVGN's Scrooge parody way back in like 07 or something, where Future James was reviewing Far Cry Vengeance on the Wii. And if you add vengeance to anything, it's gonna suck. Well, fortunately, nowadays we have Amazon Prime, so they should be able to hook me up with a pair of Ripjaws for DDR5 6000, the ideal speed to match the Infinity Fabrics clock, and stuff like that. That should be in later today or tomorrow. Well, whenever it gets here. For now, we're going to be running with 16 gigs of RAM, so the game performance I know in Forza Horizon 5 and whatnot is going to be hampered by that. Or will it? Well, let's see what happens. I also found out that the latest glitch with Microsoft Quick Boot for Windows, it kept the computer from shutting down. It would be like in the Windows 95 days, except it wouldn't say, "It is now safe to turn off your computer." So I disabled Quick Boot like I always do, because it's always been a buggy mess on multiple versions of Windows, but does it really matter? Watch this. Fires up. Turns out the beeping motherboard, if you want it to beep, is a BIOS setting. And stuff like that. So I got that fixed. I screwed up, look at that, boom. Boom. Welcome to Windows. See, that's what happens when computers are up against smartphones that get turned on and off all the time. So, does it even matter whether you use buggy fast boot or not? I think Microsoft just get rid of it. You know, Windows 10 was actually made to supposedly be fast, even if you were still running it on a hard drive. But who uses hard drives anymore for their system? I mean, corporate nettops use SSDs, PC builders use SSDs, maybe grandma with the outdated old piece of junk she uses for email might still have to suffer through a hard drive, but couple more things to do. We need a Windows license for this thing. The memory is another thing. Also, this thing has built-in Wi-Fi, which also does Bluetooth. So I want to set that to Bluetooth only and plug in the antennas. If I ever actually want to use a desktop on Wi-Fi, as nuts as that is, it's just a BIOS setting to turn that back on. But we're making some progress. I just got to make sure that I never leave UEFI mode, and I never turn off Secure Boot or let something turn off Secure Boot, because it can screw up Windows on an SSD. Yeah, all this new security stuff because of Windows 11 is such a pain. Makes you want to set it and forget it. Or maybe I just need to get more familiar with this fancy new motherboard. Alright, so how much of a Hippie chip is this Hippie chip? Especially when compared to its predecessor in Tuxedo, the FX8320E. Unfortunately, several generations of Ryzen, and they haven't advanced efficiency-wise past what the 8320E did, despite the much newer manufacturing. This processor doesn't have hardly anything going on, and yet I can't get this thing to go below 3.5 gigahertz. The old processor, the Skylake, maxed out at 4 gigahertz, but it dropped way, way lower when it wasn't doing anything. So what we have here essentially is, yeah, it's a Hippie chip, but it's a Hippie chip compared to the other AMDs, not versus the Intels. Now, Intel, of course, has a lot going on nowadays with wattage and stuff because their manufacturing fell behind. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to use this because I'm guessing Intel might ramp up even further. I mean, I've disabled Precision Boost Overdrive, and I've even disabled the turbo, so it's not going to go up to 5 gigahertz when it's trying to slam things and get things done, and it's not going to scale the power of the CPU based on the cooling. And even still, like 70, sometimes if we're lucky, we can get it down to 60 watts. So this is objectively and substantially worse than the Skylake for about a 30% improvement in performance, and it's on par with the 8320E in terms of wattage, but with substantially higher generational improvements for performance. And so this is, I don't know, this might be my last AMD system, because one of the reasons why corporate America loves Intel so much is contribution to overhead. The fact that Intel's stuff can ramp way the heck down. A Sandy Bridge can ramp down to the 30s, an Ivy Bridge can ramp down to the 20s. My Skylake could ramp down to about 35 watts when it wasn't doing anything exciting, like if it's just sitting here displaying a web page. This thing, however, 77 watts. It's basically just like its predecessor, the 8320E, except with substantially more cores. Substantially more cores and way newer architecture, but most importantly, a way newer manufacturing process. 5 nanometers gets me this. I think a lot of the problems, though, has to do with this base speed. The base speed of this processor, aka is basically the minimum speed, Whereas before, my Intel would max at 4 gigs. This thing likes to hang around 3.7, and when I turn on Hippie mode and turn off the turbo, 3.5. I wonder if there's a way to get that to drop way lower, because even my old 1090Ti would run the cores at a minimum of 800 megahertz if nothing was going on. So, AMD, once again, brutish Neanderthal products, because they're trying way too hard to beat up Intel somehow, but they're never going to break Intel's dominance with this kind of brute force Neanderthal marketing and other stuff like this. It's just never going to happen. I'm sure I can get some good performance out of this, and it's probably better than the other Ryzens, but when Intel gets better manufacturing, I'll probably go blue and stay there. Nope, wrong again. I keep forgetting that AMD sometimes stands for Advanced Moron Devices, as in they sell their processors to people who like to think that they're smart. Hippie chip, yeah. I downed the ratio all the way down to making this a 1 gigahertz chip. It is running at 1 gigahertz on all cores, and it made it worse. Not going below 80 now, because it spends more time doing stuff. So that's more time, it's drawing more power. It's doing nothing whatsoever. It's like trying to outrun the wind, basically. It's trying to get things done, get things done. And then that's it. So, yeah, I dropped the ratio all the way down. This is a sluggish 1 gigahertz 12 core now, which I'm going to switch back ASAP, and it's worse. Yeah, look at that. It's going up towards 100 watts now, because it doesn't have the power it used to have. Why does AMD give the illusion of control over these processors when you're better off leaving them in auto or overclocking the living hell out of them? Like I said, I was joking earlier about how the Ryzen reminded me of the Xeon, as in being a workstation processor. It'll have muscle, but it won't have efficiency. I really need to find better things to joke about. Right, let's set everything back to full auto. Okay, you want to see what a 1 gigahertz Ryzen chip looks like? Everything is sluggish. The startup is slower. Windows is slower to boot. Even the beep takes longer. Watch this. Delete. I don't want to go into Windows. Please put me in the BIOS. Delete. Even the startup beep will be longer and more drawn out. Ready? I think I can. The cursor's down in the corner now. It is booting. It's like real mode DOS, where literally everything gets slower. Remember when you could, any of you who've played around with DOSBox or something, or a real DOS machine, if your processor ran faster than what the game was programmed for, you could speed it up. Well, anybody who grew up with Apple II computers, the 2GS, when all your games would run at double the speed because you didn't turn the processor down to 1 megahertz in the hidden Apple menu. Yeah, we're going back to that. All right, enough of this. This is what it is. It's a workstation processor. That's it. It's got tons more performance than the Hippie chip in the FX line, but right, I'm losing some efficiency by upgrading to this thing. This is the most I've ever been in and out of a BIOS ever. This is probably the most I've ever restarted a computer ever. Fortunately, restarting on this system takes like 20 seconds. So, this may be the Hippie chip, but the motherboard also contributes based on what features you have turned on in terms of what power is actually coming out of this thing. I keep forgetting, everything's newer and faster and can do, higher clock speeds on like the memory and stuff like that. Plus the motherboard has lots of features on it that the old one didn't have. So there's going to be probably another wattage floor because I went back to full ATX with this beast. Plus, this processor is very aggressive with when it turbos up, and it has a very aggressive turbo. The base speed is 3.7, the turbo is like 5.2. That's insane. 5.2 gigahertz, 12 cores, 24 threads. And it ain't afraid to use it. You have to tell it to turn off overdrive mode and boost in order for it to stay in the 3s, and you can see what, just stock speeds actually is. This thing is made to factory overclock. XMP on the motherboard side for the memory also adds to your wattage floor, and I'm probably gaining a few watts from powering this optical drive that I almost never use. I wonder if I can rig the thing to shut down very, very quickly if it's not being used, instead of however long it takes to power the device off. But, and then have it just power back on when we push the button to put a disk in. I'm almost to the point, though, with this stuff, whoops. I'm almost to the point, though, with this stuff, where I might as well just ditch the optical drive and make a plug-in drive out of this thing and only plug it in when necessary. USB is getting so fast nowadays that it can easily probably run something like this as a plug-in drive at full speed. We got the fans all the way down, so I'm quite impressed at how quiet this is. Then again, I'm not really making the rainbow cooler in there spin up very much, running this thing in hippie mode. I'm actually going to disable the boost. Look, we're down to I have the boost turned on, and it's down to the 70s watts wise. Before I put the processor in total hippie mode, I'm basically going to turn XMP back on, just XMP. Going from 4800 to 5600, the Ripjaws memory that I have on the way is 6000, the ideal speed for the Infinity Fabric on these things. So what I'm looking to do is basically put this thing in total hippie mode. We're in the 70s now like we were before. This is about as low as I could get the Hippie chip in the FX series to go. So it might be a motherboard thing, because it's a full ATX motherboard that's powering a lot of different features that the micro ATX one didn't have. So, and it's got newer standards and newer buses and newer everything. Maybe if I really want to build a Hippie system, build an Intel system based on a net-top processor and see what performance I can squeeze out of that, like a T-series or a U-series core something. I don't know. But for now, let's get this thing ready to put back together. How much does XMP by itself, loading the profile that the RAM supports with just one stick, increase the wattage from these 70s? Oh man, talk about newer stuff, ramping things up more. XMP mode by itself raises the wattage floor to 90 watts. So, wow. Hey, newer, faster memory, baby. We're basically back to 1090t tuxedo levels of wattage from this thing. Alright, I'm going to put it in full hippie mode, XMP off, boost off, and overdrive off. And we'll just use it like a normal computer and see what we get out of that to start. And then, of course, I'll crank everything up if I want better performance when streaming or in Forza. I cannot believe just how much the motherboard BIOS affects the performance now. There's so many things you can turn on and off. So if you're just mostly going to be, casually playing games and browsing the web, turn off all the fancy crap. You'll probably do fine with 1080-60 without it. And then, as you do bigger, beefier tasks, turn stuff on so it can ramp up to 5 gigahertz on 12 cores, 24 threads, stuff like that. I'm just finding it disturbing, though, that AMD Ryzen Master software is, as much as I've heard all these nice things about it, it's redundant to the BIOS. The BIOS can already do all of that stuff. So I don't know if I'll even keep Ryzen Master, except as like an info screen, like, what's going on with the processor, and stuff like that. Wow, it's a whole new world when it comes to this stuff. Alright, the pair of Ripjaws RAM to go back to 32 gigs in DDR6000 when I want to enable XMP, that should be in later today. For now, though, I want to get this thing gaming. Let's put it back together, plug in all the drives, set all the drive letters, and yeah, let's start putting this thing back together. I want to have this thing running in its normal spot by supper time, and then we'll have 2010's Monolith over here for answering some more questions and transferring data. I might use the spaghetti cable to put everything on the same gigabit switch to speed up the data transfer. Alright, this thing's ready to go back. We'll just pop the RAM in when it gets here. Since there was empty space on the control panel for everything, just figured I'd put a Ryzen badge there. Not like I was using the space for anything else. Kind of fills in the gap there. I don't know. If I want to take it off, it'll probably just peel off shortly anyways. Alright, Monolith back in one piece until, well, the new RAM comes in, and we'll have some other things to do afterwards once 2010's Monolith has been properly converted to its legacy status. But I want to hook this back up, register Windows, and then we'll see how it handles things like Forza Horizon. Now watch that take all afternoon or something like that. So here's what I'm talking about now that we have 2010's Monolith back over here. See that? This is the Skylake, a 4 gigahertz processor. It'll dip below a gigahertz when nothing's going on, and that's when we see these numbers like 33 watts and stuff grand total. Keep in mind, this is 33 watts with a 2060. I mean, these are numbers we've seen from like the Delosaurus with a 1060 or Delosaurus Rex with a 1050 Ti. But I mean, these are like old computer workstation numbers, at least when the computer's not doing anything. They're dropping way lower than the AMD. So this is what I wish AMDs would do, but I guess Intel has always had the better speed stepping than AMD, because I have not seen AMD processors budge at all. More so than, you know, a little here and there. But it's always been the Intels that could ramp up and ramp down. And then there's low power processors that some companies use in net tops and stuff like that, that will actually run even lower, and you can do basic desktop stuff in them. There are lots of things that I've thought of Amazon Prime as, but I guess we can add Band-Aid for Newegg's mistakes to the mix. This is the DDR5 6000 answer to G-Skill Ripjaw's memory, the very kind of memory that I've been using since the DDR3 days. So let's see how well this works compared to RMA Vengeance over there. At least I didn't have to wait a week for this stuff to come in.
Epic fail.
Well, this has been a lot of fun now, hasn't it? Alright, now, Monolith, Ryzen 9, 7900, 32 gigs of RAM, thanks to the Ripjaw's memory, as it should have been from the beginning. A lovely way to have some fun this week. So what I've noticed versus the Skylake system, it takes longer to post, but then it goes straight into Windows. So, plus it doesn't really, you don't really have time to read what's on the screen. A couple of steps to it. I'm guessing it's doing the RAM check right now. Then it goes to a cursor in the upper left, which moves to the bottom right, and then it gets going. So, definitely some things to get used to with all this new stuff. Alright, here we go. There's the cursor in the upper left. Keyboard probably starts up before the computer does these days. It is definitely way slower to post than its Skylake predecessor. There it goes. We see you barely had time to even see anything. And there we go, straight to Windows 10. Thanks to the processor and the faster SSD, it actually gets there a little bit quicker, though this does have more drives than it did when I first booted it earlier. Alright, here we go. And there we are. What a nice weekend it's gonna be. So yeah, this is actually, just takes some getting used to, but nice to see that all that trouble that I was having was because of a bad RAM stick. Oh man, what a sad little nerd I've become in my old age. So, it's a beautiful Saturday morning on a beautiful weekend. There's guys outside tinkering with motorcycles and pickup trucks, and I'm sitting indoors tinkering with a computer. Whatever, man. But I have made some progress on what the heck's going on with this Hippie chip. Alright, so most of the performance from this Ryzen processor comes from the turbo and whether or not you enable XMP. XMP, for the RAM I selected, puts the RAM up to from 4.8 gigahertz base default speed for the motherboard and whatnot, or lowest common denominator speed, up to 6 gigahertz with the XMP profile, which from what I saw, I looked up the frequency of the Infinity Fabric on the processor, makes it a multiple of the Infinity Fabric's multiplier, so the clocks are more in sync with each other. That's why we have these RAM speeds that are like golden RAM speeds for AMD on DDR4 and 5. Depends on what speed the stuff that ties it all together runs at, and whether or not everything's in sync, apparently. So, I have basically 3 things I can do here. I tried Precision Boost Overdrive, which I'm just going to call Overdrive because I'm not an AMD, partner or anything. I haven't been given a legal contract being say Precision Boost Overdrive every single time. I'm just going to call it the Overdrive. So we have a processor. We have processors nowadays with overdrives and turbos. Okay. Anyways, so here's the thing. Precision Boost Overdrive is more about when you're slamming the processor, adding some extra voltage to overclock beyond the turbo frequency. I haven't found anything that's slamming this thing at 100% yet. Maybe in a couple of years, when things get beefier, we might revisit this. For now, though, it's mostly about XMP and whether the processor is in Hippie mode or turbo mode. The default of which depends on what you bought. There's the X series processors are turbo with an eco mode, and these Hippie chips are standard with a turbo mode. And I think there's some differences. Everything else comes down to the clocks that everything's set at for base clock and turbo clock. So here's Hippie mode, no XMP, and the turbo turned off. UFO, nuclear submarine UFO on user benchmark. We turn on XMP, and the RAM starts going at 6 gigahertz instead of 4, and it's UFO, nuclear submarine. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, let's just do the numbers. 126, 97, 143. Turn on XMP. 130, 100, 145. Turn the turbo on, take it from 3-point-something gigahertz up to 5 gigahertz, actually a little above it, and we go to 161, 118, 181, and we're all UFO. And this thing's talking about how I could run a server with this thing. Of course, it's got 24 threads, why not? That's the direction that I thought processors would go in. Essentially, when AMD launched the Ryzen and it became more about multi-core and scaling to cores, not just quad-core crap, it went in the direction of being more like a Xeon or something like that, which is one of the reasons why I went i7 instead of i5 back in 2016, even though the collective internet non-wisdom of the various fanboys said I was wasting my money by getting an i7. So we'll do another discussion on that at some point later on. Let's go to core temp. That's right. I'm getting all my numbers and words mixed up from all of this tinkering I've done over the last couple of days. This is core temp with the processor in Hippie mode. So the Windows 10 thing isn't as accurate as something that monitors everything individually like this. So it looked like the thing was barely dropping down, but it looks like cores that aren't hardly doing anything are dropping down to around 3 gigahertz or so, which is still worse than my Skylake. The Skylake would drop things down. Why don't I just boot that up and load core temp and take a look over there? But the Intel flew all over the place and the wattage went up and down with it. But also, the Skylake was a monolithic die instead of a chiplet. I really think chiplets are going to change everything with how processors work and how they become more efficient. Oh yeah, baby. You knew I was looking for an excuse to fire up 2010's Monolith again. And then look at how much quicker it starts up, too. Older processor, simpler architecture. Too bad it doesn't have speed and performance anymore, except for plenty of games at 1080p and stuff. Look at that. Simpler times, man. Simpler times. Hey, there's that RAM I got to RMA. Should I be an idiot and send it back in this Prime envelope? Nah, I don't want to insult Newegg too much, but their dud RAM is getting RMA'd for a refund while Amazon was able to get me that Ripjaw set in like a day. Maybe I should get another one and just cap cap Monolith at 64 gigs right off the bat. Although there really isn't anything that uses 64 gigs, unless there's some kind of thing with video editing that benefits from it with such high gobs of RAM like that. Alright, let's see here. Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that Intel reported everything differently and didn't do everything by the core. But yeah, I just put it in power saver mode so I can get the small number. So the cores would be dropped down to 800 megahertz minimum, same as the 1090T in the old Skylake. And that reflects, of course, in the wattage that it pulls from the wall. We're down to 34 watts. Of course, we don't have very many drives and stuff like that anymore, but This is one of the reasons, of course, why corporate America loves Intel so much. If they can get stuff that scales down, and Intel has low power offerings nowadays that can fit in net tops for corporate workstations that deliver enough punch to run a desktop for office use with far less watts. I'm actually curious if some of those old, like T or whatever, could be put inside a system nowadays, and what kind of performance can we get out of it. Might be an interesting idea for a project at some point later on. Not right now, though. I gotta pay for this nonsense first. I reactivated Hippie mode at the motherboard level on this thing, because it no longer competes on speed, and if we put it in power saver mode, which is incredibly aggressive, makes this thing run more like a tablet in terms of speed, we're flirting with the 30 watt mark. 30 watt mark now. Oh man, see, this is what I'm talking about. And I wish AMD would be like this. Or is this just the case that this is an extremely mature and efficient technology, and Intel's going to suffer with the same stuff when they switch to chiplets? Plus, I'm curious what Raptor Lake that i5 will do. I should probably team up with like a computer shop or something, see if they'll let me hook up watt meters to some systems and see what the power range is on these things. And of course, the number one reason why I'm concerned about this is, of course, this is outside of gaming. You want things to ramp way down. Because when you're doing regular computer stuff, your smartphone can do the same thing for you. Imagine if a smartphone could go to a big screen, and you have a little 5-watt device showing you everything outside of games, and then you just ramp things back up for gaming. That's why I'm concerned about the lower end of the performance spectrum. I don't want the equivalent of driving a huge, like a semi-truck as my daily driver, you know, for in this day and age of smartphones. It's one of the few ways that regular computers and whatnot can stay competitive against them. Alright, so you've seen this here. Let's go do power saver mode on the Ryzen and see what the range is. Okay, back to Monolith. With power saver mode activated to be more aggressive with downclocking the cores, we have more cores that are going over to the 3 gigahertz mark. So the thing is, though, we just saw everything go down to 800 megahertz on the other system, and I think other systems like the FX and the older stuff does that too. But yeah, it just, the minimum frequency is a lot higher than before. So I'm wondering if that has to do with why the attempts to throttle down the power when doing regular computer stuff was sluggish at best. This is one snappy system to use, though. It definitely takes some getting used to and surprises you for the first time. But I don't really need things to be that snappy. They could be normal when I'm just browsing the web. That's fundamentally what my issue is. Now let's go turn the turbo on, because this is where it gets interesting with AMD, because whereas Intel kind of kneecaps their processors and nerfs them when they decide to do something that's not overclockable, the AMD hasn't really done that, as some people have noticed. The frequencies are a little different between X and non-X, but let me just turn the turbo on and let's come back to this. That's a sharp-looking BIOS screen. Of course, it's piano colors, so you can see the DDR going at 6 gigahertz because the XMP's turned on. Let's go to the overclock section. That's where all the fun stuff is. I don't really like a lot of manual overclocking, though, but robust factory overclocking from the manufacturer, I'll be glad to play with. So we have two sections in here. We have AMD overclocking and CBS. This is CBS. That's CNN I'm thinking of here. Yeah, that's the boost section. So precision boost overdrive, I have that turned off. I'm not going to need it until I use more CPU and stuff. We'll look into that later. For now, though, let's turn the turbo back on. Core performance boost. Core performance boost. Turn that back on and get our 5 gigahertz back. Alright, now let's see what kind of ranges we get in core temp. That beep seriously sounds like a microwave. Quick, while everything's loading up, let's see what things are peaking at. I saw 5.4 gigahertz, yeah, 5450. Almost 5.5 gigahertz on there as all the programs are starting up, and look at all this routinely hitting 5 gigahertz and stuff like that. Looks like some cores are going down to 3 gigahertz from time to time, but for the most part, even with hardly any load, we're seeing things jump like this. Some 3s, some 4s, some 5s. So previously, it was, your minimum speed up to your stock speed, and then up to your turbo speed. It doesn't look like there's as much minimum speed now as there used to be. Things jump mostly between stock and turbo. And what's interesting here, though, is you see all those 4s in there. If I bring up, and I'm in balance mode, so I'm in balance mode, I can turn on high performance mode here. But if I bring up my task manager and go to my performance, it sets the base speed at the lowest, goes to 4.7 gigahertz. You'll see it on here. I don't know how to calculate it. See? Sometimes 4.6. But do you know what the base speed was for the X variant of this processor? 4.7 gigahertz. So it makes you wonder what these numbers would look like on the X variant, the 7900X. Would it be a situation where there was just less of a range of frequencies and AMD just was able to clock things down further? But I can tell you, running this thing in Hippie mode with no turbo, I'm still able to play games and multitask pretty well. Let's fire up the power thingy here, and let's try and lock things down more with power saver mode. Do things go down? Oh yeah, it does go down to 3 gigahertz. Substantially more aggressively too. So it looks like power saver mode might actually be worth using if I really want to on this system, versus the Intel where power saver mode would slow things down so much it was like running a tablet. So yeah, some more 3 gigahertz values. When you turn on power saver, I switch back to balance and I start seeing more 4s and 5s. I could turn on high performance. Oh, there's ultimate performance too. So what does high performance do? Does it stay in the 5s more often? What about ultimate performance? Let's see. Yeah, ultimate performance spends more time at 5.2 gigahertz. So let's go to power saver and drop it back down to the 3s. This is cool though, but without the turbo, I think it goes just a hair lower. The problem is, I've already tested this with the watt meter. These lower speeds on the cores don't really affect the wattage that the array uses very much. Just one of the many things that has changed with chiplet CPUs nowadays. Alright, yeah, I was correct. 2.9 gigahertz in power saver mode with the processor in Hippie mode with no turbo. Alright, well, I'm going to be spending the weekend tinkering with this stuff and seeing what I can get with the various levels of performance here. This has been a heck of a lot of fun, and it's about time I finally got the Duke Nukem Forever of processors. AMD Ryzen, baby. And so the next chapter of Monolith's years-long story, shall we say, begins. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by. Nukem Forever processors. Nukem Forever processors. With the announcement of the limited quantities for Q4 and widespread availability in 2017, this is turning the Monolith project into an upgrade project of sorts. The Duke Nukem Forever processors. 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 So, should I wait till after Thanksgiving for all of this and see where the Zen is at? The only thing I can say for certain is I'm curious about a Zen APU laptop